Hello and welcome to the Soul Wisdom Exchange. I'm Regina Chris, the creator of At Maitri, and I have Laura Garcia here with me today. Laura is a spiritual couture life coach, helping women over 50 find the divinity and authenticity within to fill their cup without the unnecessary guilt that comes from the patriarchy when we choose to put ourselves first. So today's going to be a fantastic conversation. I'm super excited to talk about soul wisdom with you, Laura. As a reminder for anyone who's new or hasn't watched a lot of these episodes, I define soul wisdom as our authentic ways of knowing or receiving and being or expressing ourselves. So, Laura, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, and it's a pleasure being here with you, Regina.
Oh, thank you so much. I've been really looking forward to this. Um, Laura and I recently both contributed to a book, a multi-author book, where we were talking about creativity. And I read Laura's story. It's a really, really beautiful story, so well written. And just, when in your profile, I wrote that you help women really finding their divinity and their authenticity. I truly believe that that's a space that you hold really well. So I'd love to hear how you identify what are your soul wisdom languages.
Well, just like you mentioned, listening to the little voice within,
Mm-hmm.
because we tend to say, well, I used to say, I'm not creative, I'm not intuitive, but that's a fat lie. We all are
It
creative,
is.
intuitive, but we also choose not to listen. When
Mm-hmm.
the little voice tells us something we don't want to hear, we ignore it and we're like, no, no, come on, give me something useful. And the voice, our
Yes.
intuition, is always guiding us to do the right thing. But we're always in our mind looking for, no, I want something else. So we don't listen to it. So that's, to me, that's listening and following
Yeah.
it because we do have it.
Oh, yeah. And, like that little voice, I love that you said we don't always listen to it. Give me something useful, right? Like, I hear a lot of people that I work with will say, like, well, I don't know. How do I know it's a sign or how do I know it's a confirmation? How do I know because it's not super clear? And it's like you have to really get used to those subtleties, that little voice. I love that you said that, right? It's kind of subtle, it's kind of quiet until it's not, and then it smacks you right in the face because it's like you're not listening, you're not listening. You want something big, you want something really clear. Here you go, right?
That's exactly what happened to me. Exactly. I'm sure
Yes.
all the people I know they were there. Like I hated my job. I hated with a passion. I used to drive to work hoping this is selfish of me, and I'm
Hmm.
embarrassed to admit it. But I used to drive to work hoping to get in a big accident or something would happen. And I never stopped to think, if something happens, somebody else is going to get hurt, not just me.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I had that signs, and I chose to ignore all the signs that would tell me leave this job. You can do so much better. And I ignored them, and I got a big smack in the head, literally.
Yes, you
So
did.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what happened.
you
Literally
know
smacked in the face. And
I definitely want you to talk about your story, but before we jump into that, I also want to just pull something out that's kind of coming to me right now that's important. And um, you know, a question that I get frequently is how do you know if it's the voice of your intuition or it's the voice of your ego or the voice of your conditioning, right? Like how do you tell the difference between those voices? And a lot of times people will say, oh, well, the voice of your, soul or the voice of your wisdom, that's benevolent. It's going to be kind. It's going to be loving. And I totally agree with that. However, it's not always loving and kind, meaning that it's nice and pretty and really even gentle, like, it can be quite curt and forceful when that is what is needed, right? And so, um, when you were talking about driving to work and having these thoughts about wanting to get in an accident, that is the way that I received that is you had gotten to a point where you weren't listening to those more gentle nudges of, I'm uncomfortable. I am not happy here. I need to do something about this. And those thoughts were coming in to support that kind of energy, right? But there also was this loving part of you that was kind of in an argument with that, right? But then in comes your wisdom and says, you've got to do something about this, right? It is time for a change, and these thoughts are creeping in. They are creeping in because you're not listening to these more subtle, more gentle hints of, this is uncomfortable, I'm not happy here, it's time for a change, right? So in comes this really big, really undeniable situation, right?
Yes.
Do you want to tell us about that situation?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's not always easy, it's not always gentle, it's not always going to be what we would prefer or choose to.
Mm-hmm.
That's choose to ignore it. Like I kept thinking, I can't leave my job. I was making a really good salary,
Mm-hmm.
and I made husband. So I was not the only breadwinner, but my husband made half the need. And I thought, if I quit my job, our lifestyle is going to change. Who's going to pay all the bills? I can't stay home. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
kept on working. Instead
Mm-hmm.
of listening, I hate my job. I can find something else. Something will come up. I didn't even give myself a chance to say, I can't afford to quit. I have to stay here, stay the course. That's actually what I used to tell myself. Put your head down, stay the course, it's going to be fine. Of course, it wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no.
That's why I say
Um,
sometimes it's not what we want to hear, but that's how it works.
yeah, and just like what you were saying is about feeling like our lifestyle would change, right? I can overcome this. I can keep pushing through. I think that the intention that that's coming from is coming from a place of love, right? So you're not necessarily actively thinking, I'm going to go into work every day and make myself miserable as a martyr, or anything like that. It's more like, I truly want our family to be happy. I truly want us to be stable, right? And um and I think that's the same with the wisdom that's coming through, is the intention is really to create that space that is, from a place of love, although it doesn't always show up feeling like it's coming from a place of love, right?
Yeah. But I think, like when you said, how do you know which voice is the ego or the intuition? I think the ego, I mean, your intuition always has the best intentions.
Right.
And like they may not be easy decisions for you to make, but like living my good paying job, I could have left it, but that was not an easy decision, but that's not a hard decision. I chose, hey, I could listen to that. It's not that, oh, I'm going to stay here just to buy a bigger house or luxury cars or anything. That was not my intention.
Right.
But that's how I differentiate. That your ego always wants something outside from you, something bigger, and not always what's best for you. But your intuition is always looking out for you.
Yeah, it's I almost think of the ego like a costume. Like, it's something that is we can identify with, right? We can put it on, we can wear it, we can really love it in some ways. Like, uh even though we don't maybe recognize that that's what it is, but it's something that really makes us, in some way, it brings us comfort, or it brings us joy, or there's something about it that we do identify with, right? It's this thing that we have around us, and it may serve a certain purpose at a certain time. But if you think about a costume, right, we change our costumes all the time. Pajamas are costumes. You put them on to go to sleep. These are this is the right appropriate thing to wear when you go to sleep, right? But you don't necessarily wear pajamas when you go out into the world and you're doing something else, right? If you're going dancing, you might not wear pajamas. You might wear a fancy dress, or you might wear, particular shoes because those are designed for that particular activity. And that's kind of how I think of our ego too, is that, it may have a time and place where we need it, and it may help us to do a certain task or to accomplish something, but it's not something that we necessarily need to have on all the time, or that it necessarily helps us all the time, right?
No, beautiful analogy. You're right. We need it. Everything. It's like fear. We don't want to be fearless. When people say, "Oh, I want to be fearless," you don't want to be fearless.
Right.
You need your ego as much as you need fear. You need fear
Hmm.
to keep you safe. Like if you didn't have fear, you would just walk across the traffic without paying to incoming traffic, right?
Yeah,
You
you'd
need
probably be
fear
dead.
as much as you need your ego. Yes. Only psychopaths are nice. You don't want to be a psychopath, right? No, but
No.
fear and habit we need.
Right.
It's like everything in moderation serves a purpose. It's like fires. So you can make hundreds and thousands of matches on a tree. You cut down a tree, imagine how many matches you can make. How
Hmm.
many matches do you need to burn a forest overnight? One
Just
match,
one. Yeah.
right? Just one. Everything serves a purpose, but everything in moderation. It's like drinking. You can drink a cocktail or two, no harm done. You drink a lot, you can get
It,
uh,
it can
drunk, you
definitely
have
cause some
hangover,
harm.
there are consequences.
Hmm.
Yeah, everything in moderation and knowing how
Definitely.
to use it. Main thing, I think, the most important thing is loving yourself.
Yeah.
Truly, deeply loving yourself, I think. That's the key to
Yeah.
knowing what's good and what's not.
Yeah. And when you, before we move on, so we have a comment that says fear can also be a good motivator, right? It can definitely be
Oh
a
yeah,
good motivator.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
you don't
and
want to get rid of you. You need it.
no, no. I mean, it's there for a purpose. Everything does have a purpose. It's when you sit in that space for longer than you need to, that's when things become toxic, right? That's when they become unhealthy. And so I love that
Oh,
you were saying
absolutely.
that. Sorry, what did you say?
I say absolutely. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry
That's
about the
Oh no, it's okay. I know we tested this earlier, and just for the viewers, like there is a little bit of a delay, but we were joking that technology is just having a rough couple of days, and we're just gonna roll with it. So totally fine. Um, but yeah, what you were saying about love, right? Like love being kind of that baseline for what it is that you like, where you experience things from, right? And if you truly understand what that feels like and what that looks like, then when you come into a space or an experience, um, she says, good old Mercury retrograde. Uh, when you come into a space where there's a contrast with that, right? When something is not loving, then you can quickly identify that, and you can look at it and say, what is this telling me, right? Is this telling me that it's time for me to go in the other direction because this is not feeling like love? Or is it here as a warning sign, right? Like, think about an ambulance, a fire truck, a police siren, all of these sirens, right? Those are not comforting sounds necessarily unless you're the one needing the help. But like the sounds of those sirens are meant to cut through other sounds, right? To overcome them so that it's this like piercing sound so that to get out of the way for that, right? When I went to Russia, the first time I went to Russia in high school, I went on an exchange program and I was learning the language in high school. And I didn't know a whole lot of words, but one word really stood out to me, and the word was ostorojna. And I remembered that word. I still remember it today. And the reason I remember it is because the way it was explained to me is that this word means look out, you're about to die. Like
Wow.
it's caution, but not caution in a passive way, right? This is like a piano's falling on your head, a truck is about to hit you, you're gonna fall in a ravine. Like this is not like, oh, tiptoe, be careful. This is like big danger, right?
Eminent danger.
That was a lot of years ago. That I was in high school. That was when I was a freshman in high school. So we won't count the years, but let me just say it was several. But I still remember that word, right? Because if I were to hear that word, I knew that I needed to be alert. And that is the energy that comes through. So is that a loving energy? Absolutely. Absolutely, it is. Because if somebody says that word to you, they're trying to protect you, right? And I think that is what fear does for us we when we experience it. Now we have the option to say, oh, thank you very much. Let me see what you were trying to show me. Or we can say, oh my God, we're in fear now, and then just live there, right?
And I think that's what happens to a lot of people. We don't. I wish we were like, you know how animals you have. Well, maybe you have never seen, but you heard about a deer or something being chased or
Uh-huh.
hunted, and they know they're in danger.
Uh-huh.
But once that's over, they shake it off. I took a well, I can't say that Kijang class. You know that
Yeah.
Chinese slow
Yeah.
Kijang, and they say that they have a shake it. You shake it. That's one of the moves. You shake it, and it
Mm-hmm.
feels really good in the body. And that's why animals they shake up the fear. Once they shake the fear, it's out of them. They don't have it in their system anymore. But
I
we
love that
tend, as
example.
humans, we tend to hold on to it. Whatever happened to you happened years ago. Your boyfriend, whatever,
Mhm.
cheated on you, or your husband got mad at you, and you just hold on to the memory still
Mhm.
in your body. Maybe just shake, get rid of it, and forget about it, and move on. Right?
Yeah, it does. It actually, I'm laughing a little bit because for a while, I was doing chakra dancing. I don't know if you've ever done that before. Um, but it's basically dancing, an intuitive style of dancing that um, is to music that is set to like hertz that basically would align with the energies of your different chakras. And so
Primary chakra. I love that.
yeah, it was a really beautiful practice. And so you can do it, you can do it on your own. You don't have to necessarily have specific music, but a lot of times you can find like if you I can find music through like Insight Timer, or you can even go on like Spotify or something like that, and you can type in the like sacral chakra, for instance. So and then you'll find music that is aligned with the energy of the sacral chakra. And so I was actually the story that I'm telling was working with my sacral chakra. And for some reason, I get this like I said, it's intuitive, right? So you move intuitively, you just let whatever comes through come through. And I find that when I work with my no, it was my solar plexus actually, I think. But anyway, it was either sacral or solar plexus, and I just had this urge to like shake, right? Like to just feel like I needed to like shake off energy. And that is often, I think, where we hold things in our belly, like we hold that energy, it just sits with us. And so anyway, like I had this moment where I was just like, I just felt like I needed to shake, 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 shake. And I was like shaking my body so hard that I actually started like coughing. And I had this like coughing fit because I had like shaken so hard that I had like actually just like shaken everything. And my partner was away at the time and she came home and I'm in the kitchen, I'm like guzzling water and I'm trying to like just like bring my energy back in. She's like, "What did you do?" And I was like, "I chakra danced too hard." She was just laughing at me, but that's how I felt. Like I really felt like I needed to like shake so hard to just get this energy rattled and out of me. And I felt much better afterwards, I will say.
Right. It's just like when you exercise, right? You exercise so
Mhm.
hard you're almost out of breath, but it feels you
Yeah,
feel tired but energized. I love that.
yeah. I know. And I don't think it has to always be that way either, right? Like we can definitely have like there's a yin practice and for a while I was just like really that was what my body wanted. It was just like really wanting me to do like a yin practice, right? Sometimes I just need to stretch, if I've been sitting at my desk too much. But I think that's the body wisdom, right? That's your soul wisdom coming through your body saying, hey, this is what I need right now. And are you listening to what those messages are, or are you waiting for the one that says, I'm now going to show up in such a way that I'm going to knock you down until you listen and figure and, do the things that I'm asking you to do?
That's the thing. I love that you say that. I don't have a routine like, oh, I have to do this. I never, ever make myself do anything, just like I was telling you earlier, do anything I don't want to do.
Uh-huh.
So every day could be different. So one day I go out for fun, and someday I just sit and do nothing. My husband
Hmm.
will come in and, what are you doing? Nothing. He looks around and I'm not reading or writing. It's like, you're just sitting there. Yeah. I just love being. It's like, how can you do that? For me, it's easy. I can
Yeah,
just be. I don't, we're being, human beings. We can just be, do nothing.
we
And I
can.
challenge anyone, they can just sit even for 10 minutes, no reading, no listening to music. Most people cannot do it, not even 5 minutes. I know my husband can't. He walks in the room, turns on the TV. Even if he's going to go
Hmm.
in the bathroom, he'll turn the TV on.
Yeah.
Something has to be going on. It's so hard to just be and do nothing. I go with every day, like I say, it's different. Whatever I feel like doing.
I love it. I think that's fantastic. And I will say, like, I haven't always been that way. I used to be more, I needed to have something, right? I needed to have some kind of noise or some kind of distraction in some way. I had to be doing something or with someone. And I mean, at that time, like when I think back to what my life was like at that time, I was not very present in my body. I was not very aligned with my soul wisdom. I would not have even known what those words meant, I think, at that time. And now I really enjoy things like that. Like I love to, especially to be outside in nature and to just be there, right? Just to just allow the sounds and the smells and the scents and everything to just be. Um, but sometimes I also like, especially if I get overstimulated, I will go and sit in the living room and I will just sit in the dark, or I'll go in my bedroom and I'll like just sit in the dark. And my partner will come in and she'll say, "What are you doing?" Like, kind of like what you were saying about your husband, like she'll come in and say, "What are you doing? Are you just sitting in the dark?" And I'll say, "Yes, I'm just sitting in the dark." "Well, what are you doing?" "I'm listening to the sounds of silence." Like, I just, like there's something actually There is a sound. I think that silence has a sound. I actually have a good friend who has a company, or
It,
named her company that, like Silence of Sound, Sound of Silence. Now I'm like mixing it up. Anyway, it's silence has a sound. And the first time I remember hearing it was when I was in Arizona. I was driving out to the Grand Canyon, and we were like in the middle of nowhere. There was like no one around, nothing around, no cars, no people, no animals even. Like we were at this very kind of um, all you could see was nature. And I don't remember why we did it, but I stopped the car and I just pulled the car over to the side of the road and I got out and I just stood there. And it was so quiet that you could hear the quiet. Do you know what I mean?
I love it. Yeah, I do know
Yeah,
it. It's to me comforting.
it is. Yeah, it absolutely is. Um, I don't know that it was comforting to me at that moment, um, but it definitely is comforting to me now. So yeah, it was just one of those things. Yeah, her company is called Silence of Sound Yoga. I don't know. I was like getting that backwards in my head because I said the sound of silence. But anyway, there's also a Simon and Garfunkel song about it, right? The sound of silence. And I love Simon and Garfunkel.
Yes,
Um,
me too.
but yeah, it's a really to me it's a really comforting sound. But I don't think it is for everyone.
No, you know what? Most people, I think, I never used to be in quiet, and I actually afraid to be by myself. I was afraid of my own shadow. And so
Mhm.
this is something new also that came out of me getting. Now I love being quiet. I could be by myself all day long, which I am most of the time. My husband
Mhm.
goes to work at 6 and comes back at 8, so I'm by myself all day. I love it,
Mhm.
but that wasn't always the case. I used to be afraid of my own shadow. I hated being by myself. I couldn't wait for my husband to come home and light, have the radio, the TV going. The more
Mhm.
sound, the better for me. Now I just
Well,
love the sound. And the dark, I
you
love.
yeah, the dark is also can be very I don't know. I've never been a big one for bright lights. Like light is just I'm very sensitive to light, and so I tend to have very subtle lighting, and um I don't know. It's something that I've always felt, but it can be really intense for me. So like even it's funny, like my phone, like the brightness of my phone, I have it turned all the way down almost all the time because it's just too bright. And even that sometimes I'm like, this needs to be less bright. Um, I think once you get really tuned in and you start to expand your awareness outside of your physical body and you get aligned more energetically, you are then experiencing things on a level that is a little bit more intense, because it's those subtleties, right? Like when you're in that place of distraction, when you're only living in the physical space, you're not aware of what's going on energetically. It's not something that you even know is there, right? Like it's hard to say, but like when
That's
your
correct.
eyes adjust to the dark, right? Like you can see in some pretty dim lighting. And at first, though, when you turn off the lights, if you've been in a bright room, you may not be able to see as clearly. It may feel like you can't see anything at all. But once you start to adjust to that, then you realize, oh, you actually can see quite well. And I think that's exactly what happens when you expand your awareness in this energetic way. You realize that things are more clear than you maybe once thought they were, and then those things that were so clear before can actually feel really intense and kind of bright.
And also when you learn to mind, because your thoughts are scary. It's scary in here. The images what we think about, like when me when I used to be by myself, I used to be all this stuff. Or what if somebody comes in? What if somebody breaks in? Or what if you hear a noise and you're afraid? It's
Hmm.
all your mind and telling you all these things. But when you learn to control your mind and you can change your thoughts, and that
Right.
puts
But,
everything in perspective.
but where did your
Now I
mind
know my
learn
mind. I know that I can control
that?
over studying.
That's okay. I was gonna
Because
say,
our mind is just,
sorry, there was an
our
overlap.
mind is just, uh, I was saying our mind's job is to think, right? So it's always non-stop thinking, but it's
Hmm.
up to us to guide it where we
Yeah,
want it to go.
yeah. Your mind's job is to think, right? But it also is, it's like a computer. I think of our minds like a computer. The computer
It
may
is.
be able to find data, it may be able to regurgitate that information, right? But it has to come from somewhere. We put the information into the computer, and then you can use the database to find the information. You don't start with a blank database that just says, oh, let me find all this information. So when you say our mind thinks these things, right? Thinks, oh, I'm in danger, or what if someone comes in, or what if this happens? That didn't initiate in your mind. That initiated from something outside of you that was recorded in your brain. And then your brain is finding that, like, oh, okay, let me look in the database to say, what happens when we're alone in the dark? Oh, all the movies I've ever watched and all the things that have ever been on TV and all these stories that people have told tell me that I'm in danger, right?
Exactly. Yes. And that's why I hated scary movies. I didn't like them. And
I don't
now
watch them.
I know, but I don't watch them at all either. And my husband knows. He won't. Sometimes he'll sit downstairs and he's like, "Want to come and watch a movie? What are you watching?" He'll tell me, like, "No, thanks. I go
Yeah.
upstairs." I don't need to do that. There's nothing I can learn from that. They may be
I've
fun and scary,
never
not for me.
I've never liked them. And I remember, the house that I grew up in when I was little, actually my sister's on this call right now watching. So um and she is like, both of my, actually all of my siblings love like horror movies and things like that. I don't. I never have. And um when I was little and my parents and my siblings would watch the movies, I would I would not want to watch them. She says, yeah, hold on. She says, I love horror. Can you tell by her photo? Um, and I would say, like, I don't want to watch those, but the way that it was presented to me is, oh, she's too sensitive, right? These are too scary for her. Even now, my niece, who's like 11 years old, she watches things that are scarier than I, and ever since she was like 4 years old, like her favorite movie when she was 3 or 4 years old was Coraline, and I tried to watch it with her, and I was like, this is horrifying, like absolutely horrifying. Like, they went down into the basement, and then the lady took their souls and replaced their eyes with buttons because she took the souls out through their
Oh
eyes. And I was
wow!
like, why is this a children's movie? This is not,
Oh
like, this is
no!
horrifying. But, like, the thing is that I have realized that I spend a lot of time in the energetic realms and the spiritual realm, and like, I have always had this ability to be in those spaces, and what I experience in those spaces is not what I see on TV. And when I experience those stories from TV, or I experience these images, it really messes with my head because it makes me think, oh, this is what I'm going to experience, and it makes me not want to go there, and it makes me fearful of being in those spaces when I know that what is true for me is very much not that. And so I've realized now that it just doesn't serve me. There's nothing about those images or those stories that I find to be nourishing or pleasant or entertaining even in any way. It's actually quite the opposite. It's like physical trauma. I can feel it in my body.
Yes, I agree with you. And we don't need that. I don't even like watching the news because the
I don't
news they
need.
talk only about the bad stuff. there are good things happening every single day. People do kinds, random kinds of acne, kindness and stuff. On the bad, I hate watching the news. I don't watch TV at all. Actually, I have no need for it. But I have to
I
tell
don't
you,
watch a lot.
I have to tell you. You say they used to tell you you're super oversensitive. That's a superpower. That's a
Yeah.
superpower to be oversensitive. Because feeling is a secret to everything. If you're a feeler, you have magic in you. I love that.
Yeah, no, I totally believe that. And um and I don't think that that's any better or worse than anyone else, right? Like, I'm not saying that if people watch the news or if they, watch horror movies or they, there's something in that for them. I think there's something
Oh,
for
of course.
everyone, right? And I don't personally get anything out of it because, like you said, like this, that is a superpower that I have, right? I have this deep empathy that I can feel. And when I watch something like that, I'm also experiencing it in my body. And I think that that is why, um, it feels very traumatic for me because even little things like right now there's been construction outside my window, and I went into the kitchen earlier and I saw there's like a dead rabbit on the ground, and I just like
Oh,
I could just feel it in my body. I was just like, oh, like there's this heaviness that comes in this grief of just I don't know what happened, if it just got caught up in the construction or whatever, but there, that is something that I feel. And you can't necessarily walk around having that experience all the time and staying in that space. Like, I have to learn how to feel it, experience it, acknowledge it, and then let it go, right? Because otherwise, I would be flat on the floor, not able to function.
do anything. Yeah, not be productive at all. Yeah,
No.
that's true.
Yeah. Um, and as a little girl, like, I would get sick a lot too. And I think that, now I understand that I was processing all of that in my body, and I didn't know how to explain it or how to release things in that way that, we were just talking about, of being able to experience it and honor it, recognize where it's coming from and release it, right? And so I would hold it in my body. And that brings me back to kind of like what we were talking about with shaking it off. So when we have that experience, and we can recognize that it's in our body before, Jesus, we grew up surrounded by negative energy, absolutely, for sure. Um, and all of my siblings, honestly, I really feel are very intuitive and very sensitive in their own ways, and everybody deals with it in a different
How
way.
many do you have?
There are four of us,
Mm,
so
that's nice.
um,
That they're all in the same sensitive, intuitive like you.
um, I would say differently than me, but in their own way. So, one, the sister who's on here, I would say she's very intuitive like me, but yeah, each of us, I think we have, well, I mean, honestly, I believe this for everybody, right? I believe everybody has a way of experiencing their intuition and their sensitivities, whether that is a physical sensitivity or, and I don't mean sensitivity in a negative way at all. I mean, where is it that you are empathic, right? Are you empathic with the weather? Are you empathic with physical or with animals, right? Like, and I think we all have kind of there's a spectrum of all of these things. And for each of us, and I mean this collectively, everybody, not even just my siblings, but like everybody, there's a spectrum. And it's almost like, when I don't know if you've ever seen this, but the image that comes up for me is when you are editing a photo. Like, if you take a photo with your phone and you go in to edit it, you can slide like, here's the vibrancy, here's the, the contrast, here's all these different things, right? And you can slide this tool back and forth on a bar, and there's a spectrum. And in some ways, like depending on which one you slide your finger on, the image becomes brighter, or it becomes clearer, or it becomes more contrasted, et cetera, et cetera. And so I believe that each of us individually, each human, we all have all of the bars, right? And some of us just have
Oh,
the slider is further towards this side or further towards that side. And it's constantly moving because every time we have experiences, every time we work with our intuition or work with our empathic gifts, then we slide the bar a little bit. And so that's what makes us each have our own kind of spectrum within us that we experience those things through.
absolutely. And that's what makes it and special, perfect exactly as we are.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Imagine if we were all the same. How boring would it be, right?
right. Exactly. Yeah, we would be. And we wouldn't have any way to understand ourselves through our interactions with someone else too, right? If we were all carbon copies walking around, there would be nothing to learn because there would be no way of seeing, okay, well, this is a little bit different than me. Why is that, right? Bringing that curiosity and bringing that um, playfulness or even sometimes resistance. And I think resistance is something that we're often taught is a bad thing. That when we feel resistance, that's a bad thing, but it's just like fear, right? As you said before, if we walked around with no fear ever, we would also probably not be walking around because we'd probably be dead because we would have walked out in traffic or been eaten by a bear because we thought that we were, invincible. But if we had no contrast or resistance in our lives either, what would push us to grow? What would make us curious, right?
Yes. And we learn so much. Well, that's life, 50, right? If we were always happy, we would appreciate it.
Right.
That's why when we're sad, you know, it's good to be sad sometimes. I mean, of course, I don't want to be sad, but sometimes it's good to feel what sad is. That way you really appreciate when you have your good days. Because, it's like
Yeah.
a balance. We are like a balance.
Yeah.
We're up, we're down. And
I
that's
think
just
that's,
life.
I think sad. I think sadness can also be a release, right? Like sometimes we need to feel that feeling of sadness to allow that to escape our body, right? It's almost like there can be, I don't know, there's this very thin line between I was talking about this with someone the other day. Like there's this very thin line between like bliss or euphoria and pain, right? Like this is why I think a lot of times people who are not feeling pain in an emotional way seek out pain in a physical way, right? Or even like people who get a lot of tattoos or things like I don't have any tattoos, so I can't say, but my Angie, who's on the call, she could probably say something about tattoos. But I've heard people say that it is a there is actually like almost like a pleasure in it. Like there's it's painful at first, but then it becomes almost like this like there's a rhythm to it, right? And I don't necessarily understand that particular experience, but I can understand it from like through exercise. There when I go and do like a really cathartic, workout, if I push my body really to a place where like my blood's pumping and I'm moving my body and my muscles are sore from that, there is this like like I feel the soreness, but it's almost like a good feeling soreness because
Oh,
I
feels so
know
good. Yeah.
there's right? There's this also this understanding of like, oh, my body is thanking me for this. I feel it. And yes, there's a soreness. And yes, that's uncomfortable and it could be labeled as pain, but it's also it's almost like a release or a relief happening in my body as well.
Yeah. That's a sweet kind of. I love that thing.
Yeah. She says, yes, that's why I call it ink therapy. Yeah, she has a lot of tattoos. But yeah, yeah, there's something about the physical, like, or even getting a massage, right? Like you manipulate the tissue, but there is a part where, like, sometimes it's too much, right? Like there's this part where when I get a massage, she goes into like my glutes and my hips, and I'm like, ah, that really hurts, and it's not pleasant. But then she gets into like my shoulder and my neck, I'm like, ooh, that like hurts so good, right? Like it feels really good, but it's also like this pressure that's not necessarily like, oh yeah, that's great. I want to do that all day.
I think when it hurts, that's when you need it the most. That's where your energy is stuck. That's what I think
Hmm.
anyway. Because
Oh
I also
yeah,
get
no,
massages
totally.
and something hurt. The other day
Yeah.
I went, she was just massaging my hand, and right here she almost, I couldn't believe it. And she said, "Oh wow!" And she kept doing it and doing it. Eventually, it released and it felt good. But I would say, what is it? Because I know everything is connected. So I asked her, "Oh, what is this connected to? Which organ?" And she said, "I don't
Hmm.
even know." But she said, "I'll find out for you," because I was really, it really hurt. I'm like, how can this hurt so much? And so it felt good
Was
though.
it was right
I
here on
liked
your
it when
hand?
yeah, right here.
Did she answer
It
you?
just
Did she,
hurt.
do you know what organ it is?
No, she said she was gonna look into it. She said, I never had anybody ask me. I told her, I'm sure it's like, the meridians.
Yeah.
I'm sure
I
you
was
know
just
about
gonna
the
look.
meridians, right?
I do. Yeah, I have some books that show what that mean what that is. But now I'm curious. I'm like looking at my books like, ooh, now I want to look it up. Um I'll look it up for you. I'll put it in the chat in case anybody's interested that's watching this. Um but actually, we have come to our time. I told you we chatted before, and I was like, "This will go fast, and we'll be like mid conversation, and the time will come up." Um, but this has really been a fascinating conversation, and I've really enjoyed chatting with you today. Thank you to anyone who is here live, and also to anyone who's watching in the future at a different time and place. It's exactly the right time and space for you to be receiving this. So if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe so you make sure to get your updates when I go live again, or Facebook, make sure to like it. And I will be back again soon with another episode. So thank you, Laura, for being here with us today.
Oh, my pleasure, Regina. You're a wonderful host. Thank you so much for having me. Enjoyed
Thank
it.
you. I appreciate that. Okay, well, have a great day, everyone.